Councillor Black.
Second it, and if I could speak to it in support of the rake, just looking at the video and reading the report, it's pretty thorough. It looks like it'll be doing a much better job at the lower cost, and like you said, Mr. Chairman, it's unfortunate that we have to pick up things like syringes, but this piece of equipment will. So if they are there, then we'll get rid of them quickly or as soon as we can. And along with the distasteful cigarette butts, which I don't know why people leave them there, and the seaweed and dead fish even.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that will make that beach even that much more appealing. Like, no one likes to cross over and walk through seaweed and dead fish. So I think this is an excellent project and will just improve the whole experience down there in Port Dover.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Yeah, Bill, if you could tell us, what's the payback on it, and would there be any opportunity to rent it out, say, to the Ministry of Natural Resources to look after Turkey Point or Long Point beaches?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus. Yeah, we figure if we can save $12,000 a year, probably 5 to 6 years, we'll have it'll pay for itself. And you bring up a very good point that staff had mentioned. There is the revenue opportunity if Long Point was interested. We plan on using it probably 4 to 5 days a week. It is able to travel down the road, but can be loaded on a float quite easily. So yes, I think there is that opportunity, and it's something staff could definitely explore once we get it and get the kinks worked out on.
Thank you. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Crillon. You mentioned it will save $12,000 a year. Is that basically on staff's time? They're out there manually raking it?
Through the chair to Councillor Height. It's a combination, some staff time, landfill charges I've mentioned, and in the past we had relied on a contractor more, and we will not have if the rake works out the way we hope it will and what you've seen, we won't have the contract services cost as well.
And that contract has been dealt with already, like null and void as of the time we buy this machine?
The chair to Councillor Height, yes. That contract is up this year, and if we get the rake, we will not negotiate. I think we were able to negotiate another year on the contract, and if not, then we'll carry on with the rake.
Say again?
I'm sorry if I confused you. I believe the contract, we are able to negotiate another year, being 2018, agreeable upon the county or the contractor. However, if we deem not to move forward with it, we have no contract issues at all. The contract is deemed void.
Okay, so and our staff will be running this rake?
Through the chairman, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further speakers. Councillor Wells has moved. Councillor Black has seconded the recommendation in the report. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Let's go to page 45. Port Dover Water Treatment Plant status. Ms. Robinson.
Through the chairman to council, before you is the a status report update on the Port Dover Water Treatment Plant. Council will recall that we had to do some emergency work at the facility. That work is all completed. The repairs have been done. They were very successful. The purpose of this report was just to let council know that we're continuing to do some work at that facility, and we will be reporting back later on once the consultant has completed some more work about potential budget impacts at that time. Which we won't know until the consultant finishes up their work. And on the interim basis, we're also working on the disinfection at the facility. And this is, once we have the disinfection addressed, it's going to help considerably with the reliance on the elevated tank to actually provide the water. So we're really pleased with how this is moving forward, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mayor Luke, please.
I would move that we receive 1806 as information.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
I'll second.
Speak to it. Certainly.
Was this, is this within budget? Everything, all the repairs and everything is within the budget that you set out?
Through the chairman to council, that's a tricky question to answer.
Oh.
It's currently within budget, but once we get to sort of, I'm going to say the third or fourth stage of this project, we have the potential to be coming back seeking additional funds, but until we get to that point, we don't really know the value of that work yet. So far, we are definitely within the budget.
I'll take the sunshine where I can get it.
Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lee, I want to get this clear here. That repair was 600,000. Where does the 3.8 million, I'm on page 46 of your report. Where does the 3.8 come in again? Is that, I know this was an emergency repair, right?
Correct. Through the capital budgeting process, there is a historical account that was called the Port Dover Water Treatment Plant Expansion,
Right.
because we acknowledge that the existing facility isn't capable of fulfilling all of the development needs and growth potential in the community of Port Dover. That project had been started. As part of that work, we undertook some investigations of the existing systems. That's where we found the work that required the emergency repair through that. So we did that through this. We've also identified the difficulty we're having with the disinfection. So in order to ensure that we're able to continue to meet the development needs of the community on an interim basis, we're proceeding with those works. We'll be issuing an RFP to hire a consultant to do other potential works. We're basically just doing the expansions that we need to do at the facility to keep ahead of the development community, just slightly ahead of it. So we're not investing a significant sum of money before it's required to support the growth.
Okay.
So that 3.85 million was there historically for potential works to go forward. We don't know what they are yet because the consultant hasn't completed that work.
Okay, and does this has no impact, like, remember I asked a question a while back about, we had concerns with our own wells in Simcoe and Delhi and that. What about, like, the possibility, where are you at, or what did you tell us a while back about water supply from Port Dover to other areas, like interlocking? Where is that at, or where does that come in?
Through the chairman to council, we call it the interconnection of the water systems.
Right.
We're actually issuing an RFP shortly to go out to the community to hire an engineering firm to actually start that whole process for us.
Okay, and that's been budgeted, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And all of the different interconnections in between communities, et cetera, is all accounted for in the capital budget forecast.
Okay, very good, thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, one thing I wanted to clarify for council, we had a report, I think it came from James, or was in our water and wastewater budget, September 30th of 2017, the report, and I reviewed it just the other day, we have 84 million in the queue for water and wastewater projects. I think it's as of September 30th, 2017. I'm not sure where that report came from, but I do have a copy of it. And I guess, if I may, the press recorded it wrong the other day. They said we only had 60 million. So I think it's very important that the public understand the kind of money we're spending on water and wastewater projects across this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Thank you. Well, I can't disagree with Councillor Brunton on that. It's a horrendous amount of money that we spend on water and sewer. Through to staff, I'm just wondering about algae blooms. Is that a problem down in Port Dover in terms of in relationship to the water treatment plant?
Through the chairman to council, we have two lake intakes, one in Port Rowan and one in Port Dover. We historically have not experienced any kind of difficulty with respect to algae blooms with respect to the Port Dover water intake. And just the way the intake is located, we would not anticipate any, but Mother Nature sometimes throws us some curveballs.
Okay, well, what is it? Like, it seems to be cyclical down in Port Dover. I don't know if it's the plant not functioning properly, but the water can vary in taste, and sometimes it's not very tasteful.
Through the chairman to council, there's a lot of different reasons why water quality can taste, but keeping in mind that Port Dover is a intake from a very large body of water, and as such, the water quality in Lake Erie does fluctuate. It is at all times safe to drink. It wouldn't be in the system if it wasn't safe to drink.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mayor Luke has moved, Councillor Wells has seconded. The recommendation is in this report on page 45, dealing with the Port Dover water treatment plant. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right, let's go to page 49. We're going to deal with purchase of supervisory control and data acquisition systems, which we normally call SCADA. Okay?
Through the chairman to council, before you is the report for the single source supply for our current existing SCADA equipment and services for a 3-year term. And the report is also recommending that we, as part of this work, will be working with them to ensure that they develop a scope of work that's necessary for us to be able to send this back out for a request for proposal to provide that at the end of this 3-year term. Through a variety of historical decisions, et cetera, that were made, we have ended up with a single source supplier for the things in Norfolk County. And as a result, staff support the council policy that has indicated that where at all possible, we obviously like to send everything out for a competitive bidding process to ensure that we do that. Unfortunately, the way our current system is structured, it would be impossible at this point for staff to be able to source this back out to somebody else. So what we're asking for is to extend the contract that we currently have with Holden Controls for a 3-year term, at which point we'll develop all kinds of things that we need to do during that time so that we'll be in a position in 3 years to send that back out, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Black?
To move the recommendation contained in the report.
Okay. Councillor Columbus? Pass. Mayor Luke, seconder. Further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. Page 55, Public Works Report, Talbot Garden roof repairs.
Through the chairman to council, we have before you is the report for the Talbot Garden roof repairs. Council will note that the work was approved in 2016, and there was a series of process that went through in order to get to the point that we're at now. This has been bid on multiple times. We've had this out on the market for a couple of different times, and as such, we are actually recommending that we do a budget amendment to the amount specified in the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Black?
This is work that's needed, has been needed for a number of years, so I think we need to get it out and get it done. So I'd move the recommendation in the report.
Seconder? Columbus? Further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, page 59 of our agenda. Public Works again, wastewater services options.
Through the chairman to council, before you is the request to negotiate a 2-year extension to the wastewater services agreement that we currently have with Veolia. The report outlines the reasons that we have been historically with Veolia, and having undertaken the acquisition of a new service provider with respect to this, staff believe it's very important that we actually do an entire evaluation of how we acquire those services. There's a lot of varieties of ways that we can do that. It's something that we can bring in-house. It's something we can do a hybrid. If you look around in the general area, I think every municipality has some version of this. Before we send this back out for a competitive bidding process, we'd like to ensure that we're actually delivering the service in the best manner and most efficient way possible. So staff are requesting a 2-year extension to this that will allow us sufficient time to review it, provide a recommendation for council for how to proceed, and then allow us sufficient time to actually implement whatever solution it is that we deem is necessary at that time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wells first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just a quick question to Lee. You're satisfied at the present time with the service being provided?
That is correct.
I'll move the recommendation contained within the report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus?
Yes, I believe that Viola is doing a good job for the county. And
Oh, wait a minute. Can I have a seconder? Yeah. Brunton?
the question I have for Lee, Mr. Chairman, is if the county were to take this in-house, how many more employees would we require?
Through the chairman to council, I don't know, and that's the whole point of the study. is that we need to fully investigate that to see what the ramifications are, the costing, the training, all of that sort of thing. And that's why we're looking for a 2-year extension, because there's a considerable amount of work that has to go in to figure out the best way to deliver the service, the costs, and then depending on how we do that, we need an implementation before the contract expires.
That's fair, thanks.
Mayor Luke?
Chair, one question to Lee. Are we currently in a 1-year extension with Viola at the moment, this year?
Through the chairman to council, I believe we're probably near 5, 6, or 7 of a 1-year extension.
I know there were several, but we're now going from a 1-year extension to 2.
We're recommending that this sort of serve as the notice that we're going to do a 2-year extension. We're going to evaluate the service, and there will be an RFP at the end of that time so
All
that
right.
Veolia can govern themselves accordingly as well.
There will be an RFP. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Public Works. On page 60 here, you had a reorganizational review, and it's mentioned here that number 3 has the option of contracting out all the water and wastewater operations. So in 2 years' time, that could be an option come forward, and Viola or any other contractor could provide for that business?
Through the chairman to council, it is absolutely an option, but it will come forward within the next year, not within 2 years. If that's something that we're going to do, and council decides to proceed in that direction, we need about a year before we can actually make that happen. So that's why we ask for a 2-year. It gives us time to make a decision and then have enough time to implement it without having to request another extension to the existing contract.
Okay. Councillor Brunton?
Just very quickly to Lee. Lee, on page 60, like 2.9 million is for all the plants, I take. And my question to you is, are they strictly operating or in the all capital costs, or like what happens with, and I don't know what the contract says, like for pumps, or did this include your pumping stations and so forth?
Through the chairman to council, yes, it certainly does include the pumping stations, the operations of our pumping stations. This also includes ongoing maintenance that they do at the facility. So they'll take a pump out of service, have the pump rebuilt, put it back into service. All of that's included in their contract. The other things, anything of significance, sort of in the neighborhood of 100,000 plus, we would typically budget separately in a line item in our budget when we do the rate budget. So this is all of that sort of ongoing routine maintenance that you would typically have staff do on a day-to-day basis. It's all included in the cost that they provide us.
So any capital you're saying over 100,000, like that's where we come in?
Give or take, we would typically budget that separately, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Wells has moved. Councillor Brunton has seconded the recommendation in the report on page 59. You have it there before you. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Let's go to page 63, and we're going to talk about the Wyndham Road 3 Bridge deck replacement.
Through the chairman to council, before you is the Wyndham Road 3 Bridge deck replacement report. As council will recall, we had an emergency closure of this wood deck bridge back in the fall, just before the winter, I believe. And we had originally received estimates that it was in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 to do the repair work that was necessary to do that. So staff had every intention of just immediately getting it repaired and going forward. They've now come back. We've had a couple of people out to look at it, and we're going to be much closer to the $100,000 range. As such, staff are uncomfortable with proceeding without that, without the direction of council. Obviously, council has the ability, should they wish to do so, as to not spend the money and just simply leave the bridge closed, and when it comes up for rehabilitation, entertain it at that time. We do note that staff do support the replacement of that. At this point, we actually looked at a variety of different options. One of the options we considered was, can we bring in a prefab bridge deck and just basically drop it on what's there? Unfortunately, the abutments are not in the best condition, and as such, we're not sure that it's actually a good value for our money, but we are recommending that we proceed with this repair because it does have a significant impact on the agriculture in that area, and as such, we really do think it should be addressed as soon as possible, ideally before the spring season really gets going for the farmers in the area, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus?
Yes, that was my concern. I've had a few calls about this bridge being closed down. I actually thought that we were already getting a lot closer to this immediate repair, so I will move the recommendation. And can you further address, when do you feel that this bridge will be opened up for drivers?
Through the mayor, or sorry, through the chairman to council, I don't have a date at this point. Should this resolution pass council next week, it does allow us an exemption, which allows us to bypass some of it, and we can actually just contract a contractor and negotiate with them what we feel is a reasonable price for the work. And that gives us the flexibility of contacting other contractors if we need to ensure that it gets repaired as soon as possible.
Okay, good, thanks.
Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Wells? Councillor Black, you're up.
What's the detour route now? Like, how long is the detour in miles, do you know?
I don't know in miles or kilometers. If you give me a few minutes, I can figure it out. But they go at least one concession north. I think they have to go 2 concessions on the other side and then back down at least.
It's quite a
It's a significant one, and it's a single lane bridge. And so it's really having a pretty negative impact on the community out in that area.
Okay, and do you have a traffic count on it?
I can certainly provide that information. It does bisect several of the farming operations out there, so that the farm properties and all of their, for lack of a better phrase, equipment, et cetera, is all located on one side of the bridge, but the fields are on the other side of the bridge. And the result of that is that when you're having to move a tractor that many kilometers out of the way, it's going to cause them some significant concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton?
Yes, very quickly. Is this the one that we went around on the tour by Nightingale Farms? Is that the different one? Okay. And my question to Lee is, Lee, wooden deck going back on temporary, is that, what are you proposing?
There's a couple of different solutions that we can do that were all in approximately the same dollar value. Our intention with this was to, if we could obtain those funds, we're going to negotiate with the most available contractor to get the best value to do whatever it is that we need to do to get the bridge back up and running within that. So we don't want to commit to the actual type of repair, because we want to give the contractors the flexibility so that we can ensure that we get it done as quickly as possible.
Is it a big span? Like how big a span?
It's not a huge span. It's a single lane wooden deck bridge. It's got a load restriction on it.
Okay.
Year round. It's always load restricted.
So it will continue to be then?
It will continue to be load restricted until such time as it's slated for reconstruction, at which point we will be evaluating whether it should be a 2-lane bridge.
Thank you.
Yep. Any others speaking? Councillor Columbus has moved, Councillor Wells has seconded that this Wyndham Road 3 bridge deck be replaced. All those in favor? That is carried. Bringing us to my favorite topic, Meisner Dam, on page 67.
Through the chairman to council. Before you is the Meisner Dam update. Staff had committed to bringing back reports to council on an as-needed basis to provide council with updates as to where we stood on the project and the things that were going on. We have provided the update here. It's important to note that when the project was first determined, we had no idea on what the budgeting amount would be for that, because we hadn't investigated. The approved budget was in 2009. The current ones that we're seeing from the consultant are in the neighborhood of approximately $1.8 million, $1.9 million. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Before we proceed, I look around this table and I see roughly 200 years of council experience. You know how this works. You know what goes on. How many of you are surprised to see a cost increase from when we first started talking about this? And then how many of you will be surprised when we see another cost increase once the work starts or is finished? Just a few comments. Let's go on. Councillor Wells.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to move the recommendation, and then I'm going to make a comment. With regard to yours, had we been allowed to repair the dam, when we wanted to repair the dam 8 years ago, we wouldn't have this ever-rising cost. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I need a seconder. Mayor Luke? Discussion. Luke?
Well, that was one of my comments. Who knows what it would have been if it was, we could have done this 5 years ago and probably, well, we probably make the decision to repair a dam. We can't do it the first year that we, but nice. But this is, well, I think a municipality, Mr. Chair, repairing a dam is something you probably don't do, like repairing roads every year. It's a totally different item that we're dealing with here. I think a lot of them probably have just torn them out. Didn't see the value of repairing them, and that's certainly debatable. I won't argue that. I did have a couple of questions, and, you know, could come in under budget, don't know. This is an estimate for budget. I want to ask Lee about the Lake River Improvement Application that I read about on the bottom of page, for some reason I think it's 67, but I don't, there it is, yes it is. Has the county, through the chair, sent M&R the LRIA application?
Through the chairman to council, my understanding is that if it didn't go out today, it was going out this week.
If it's not going out today, it's going out?
This week, before Friday.
Is it fair to say, through the chair, that that is in any way holding up things?
At this point, we don't believe it's holding up anything.
So, through the chair, you have stated here somewhere, I think towards the end of this, Lee, that, if I may, that you're still predicting, if things go the way that you predict, that we could possibly see completion of the repair work before the snow flies next winter.
Before the end of 2018, and I'm very hopeful that we're not going to have any snow until the end of 2018.
Mr. Chair, my last comment in supporting this is I really appreciate getting these updates. When I got this agenda and saw that, as I skimmed through the green pages, that was the first thing I turned to, because I always get nervous when I see an update or hear of an update on Meisner's Dam, and I was quite delighted to see that 2018 could be the year to complete something that council started some 2009, some 9 years ago. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
Well, I will be one of the councillors, I guess, not supporting this, and haven't all along. And just wondered a question through you, Mr. Chairman, to staff, to Lee. Does this dam actually serve any function, like flood control? If we didn't have it, is there a flood control function for it?
Through the chairman to council, I don't feel qualified to answer that question. When I came to Norfolk County, council had already made the decision that we were proceeding with repair work to the dam. I didn't go back and evaluate the hydraulic requirements for that dam. So unfortunately, I'm not able to give you a professional opinion on that because I haven't done that. Should council direct staff to do so, we could certainly prepare a report about the hydraulic state of that dam, but it's not in our current mandate from council.
Okay, and secondly, have you had any complaints about the smell of the shallow water there from algae blooms?
Through the chairman to council, we have not received any complaints in the winter. It's
Oh,
good
no.
for that, but we most certainly do get our fair share of complaints in the summer about the smells in the area due to the low water level that currently exists.
Yeah, and we're not going to be able to raise it significantly to get rid of the algae blooms, I believe. It has to be kept low, even with the repaired dam?
Through the chairman to council, there The water level doesn't really affect the algae blooms. Algae will bloom on a teeny tiny stormwater management pond located in a residential subdivision, or it'll bloom on a much larger thing. The smell that we understand is coming from the dam is likely from some of the sediment that's been deposited there that would be removed as part of the construction works.
Okay, and in your overall price here, like how much we've spent, $280,000 so far, another $146,000 for engineering costs. And I'm wondering, this area was dredged at one point, I think for around $180,000. Is that included in the costs somewhere in the report? Is that part of that 280, or is that?
Through the chairman to council, I don't want to say there's dredging costs included, but the dredging is a method of removing the sediment. We're going to have to remove sediment to undertake the work that we have to do. It may not be done by dredging, but there will be sediment removal, which is effectively what dredging is trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So yes, it is most certainly included in this cost estimate.
Okay, but there was a cost of $180,000 already for dredging, and I just wondered if it was included in that 280 or if was paid from some other account.
Through the chairman to council,
Yeah.
I'm not sure who paid $180,000 to do that work. We haven't been able to find any evidence that somebody was paid to dredge that by Norfolk County.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where that number's coming from, but we'd heard that as well, but we haven't found any evidence that Norfolk County undertook any dredging activities. There was some consideration for it, but there was no authorization for the work to proceed.
All right. Okay, thanks. And yeah, I'm not going to support it because, well, as we all know, and maybe it's neither here nor there who owns it. It's like a safety issue, and I think, the primary safety would be to remove the dam, return it to a cold water stream, and I think it probably would be cheaper than double the price, as you indicated, Mr. Chairman. And as you also indicated, we have no idea if it's stopping at that point or not. I don't know if I had another point here. And I have received calls from people from the smell in the area, and I think that smell would go away if the dam was removed and you took it back to a cold water stream. I think the proof is with Sutton's Pond. We had opposition for and against on that one, and we removed the dam. It had no flood control function. It's now a cold water stream. It's revegetated. There's some people that love the way it is and some people that don't, but that smell is gone. And I don't get any more complaints about the smell from Sutton's Dam, but we're all Norfolk County councilors, and I know people up in that area of Port Dover, Silver Lake, and they do call me about the smell. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Columbus?
Just a couple things I wanted to mention. This, if the dam were ever to be removed, I thought I read a consulting engineer's report that it could cause some serious sedimentation and silting downstream from the dam, which we would be liable for.
Through the chairman to council, the concern that was raised in the consultant's report was if the dam failed in its current condition, not if we'd removed it. If we were removing the dam, we would have undertaken a plan to remove the sediment before the dam itself was redone. You are 100% correct that the consultants did express great concern that if the dam fails, the sediment that'll be washed downstream will be significant.
Okay, secondly, I noticed the first bullet on page 2 of 4 of the report. There's a statement there, as discussed with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the water level will remain as it is at present and will not be adjustable. But a lot of people in Port Dover seem to think that the water level will increase, and that's not going to be the case here. Basically, the height it's at now is what's going to be once the dam is restored.
Through the chairman to council, that is correct. That has been an issue that they have raised time and time again. Excuse me. And it was very clear from the MNRF, all of their correspondence. We've repeatedly advised council of that. The MNRF has told us we were not going to be permitted to raise the water level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Public Works, I see this is a substantial revised budget figure. What was the main driver of that?
Through the chairman to council, I would say that there's probably two main budget drivers. One is the time from the time the original estimate was done. The original estimate was done, my understanding is back in about 2008, so it's about 10 years old now. And they didn't have any information when they did the original budget. It was just a rough guess for how much it would cost if they had to do that. We've now since done a whole bunch of studies, et cetera, and determined the exact extent. We're better able to refine the estimate. The second part is that there are some changes that have occurred in public safety around dams in about 2011. And so we have to now update it to that as well. So that's also causing some of the costs increase to go up.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, in the dam report that we eventually got here at council, it mentioned that it was the steel bridge had to come off of there, and it was a rather urgent item. Have we done anything with that, or?
Through the chairman to council, it was an urgent item when we were doing the work. If we're not doing the work, it's okay in its current condition. Like, it's okay if it sits there, but as soon as we touch it, we need to deal with it.
Order of operations?
Exactly.
I got it. Okay, thank you. And my last question has to be directed to the treasurer, and that is a roadway construction reserve. It's almost $1 million hit here, and I doubt there's any money in it. Would that be a fair assumption that we'll be debenturing this entire project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Height. The original budgeted item of $990,000 to be funded from the reserve, we have anticipated that dollar amount in our 10-year capital forecast. So our multi-step plan to bring that reserve back to the black includes that amount. However, which is the reason why the balance of the budget increase, we state in the report that we would be funding that from debentures.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Brunt.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman, through you. I think when I read that report some time ago now, but the failure of the dam would be a result of the flooding of Black Creek for some reason, if I remember right. Black Creek flows down somewhere, and if you read that report, had a big bearing on the possible failure of that dam, if it ever happened. It wasn't coming from, I call it the Lynn River. Anyways, having said that, Lee, my question is, like, do you apply to lakes and rivers? Is that separate from M&R, or do you have to go to both?
We need to go through both, but the MNRF does the lakes and rivers application.
Okay, so, like, and you say that application's going out today or this week, whatever, but, so we have no idea what their comments will be yet in terms of, is that the design from the consultant going to M&R?
That is correct, but we've been very fortunate that the MNRF staff have worked extremely well with the county on this project for the last several years in terms of trying to move everything forward. And so we do have lots of comments from them already, and we've taken all of those things into consideration before we sent in the design and all of that sort of information.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak again. But I forgot an important question. Have we applied for any WECI funding for this project? Are we even eligible for it?
Through the chairman to council, it's something that we're actually looking into at this point. We understood that we couldn't do anything until we had approvals in place. And so we're hoping to continue to see whatever source of funding we can possibly find for this.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Wells has moved, Mayor Lucas seconded. You have the report and the recommendation before you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? That is carried. Let's go to page 71 and talk about asset management planning. Who's got this? Oh, our county manager.
Good evening, Council. Before you is the asset management planning report. We had referred to, the last 2 or 3 meetings, we've referred to this report. You'll recall that last week you did approve Norfolk County joining FCM. which in turn now gives us at least, we haven't actually managed to accomplish that, but when we do, that does give us access to their grant program, and that grant program is worked into the recommendations. We anticipate, we see no reason why we wouldn't fully qualify, and assuming we do, that would underwrite substantially the costs, at least in the first year and possibly thereafter, for a staff member to help us come up with both the plan and the policy. Probably stepping back, and the better place to start is to really appreciate how the province has changed the law, or the fact that the province has established now regulations specifically dealing with asset management planning. In December, they changed the reg, or they created the reg, and it came into force in January. And this is really a substantial disruption, a substantial evolution to the municipal landscape and how we operate. A number of us, whether on the engineering side, the senior leadership side, or the accounting side, when we go to our various conferences, this is sort of like the topic, because we're all sort of trying to wrap our mind around where we're going with it. I can tell you that myself, I'm now trying to look at asset management planning and the plan the same way we do our official plan, that it's a fundamental, foundational, strategic document that guides where and how we're going to spend money on big ticket capital items. I don't specifically in my remarks want to get too technical or too focused. It's there in the report. Basically, it's come up with the plan first, or the policy first, and then the plan over multiple stages. They've given us a few years to come into full compliance. Producing first the policy and then the plan is going to be a major and significant undertaking, and one that we can't do with our existing staff resources. There are multiple options in how we go forward and address that. Council could approve us going out to the private sector, retaining consultant services, and attempting to go that way. That's not the staff recommendation. Nevertheless, it is a valid course of action, and it has been placed before you for your consideration. And then secondly, is the recommended staff course of action, which would be a new staff member, our goal being to either substantively or possibly entirely covering the salary of that person from existing grants that do exist and are available. Ultimately, and certainly we respect the default preference of this council, which has been made clear on many occasions not to increase the existing staff complement wherever possible. Here, though, what we're talking about doing is looking to retain a skilled professional, to add him or her to our team, and to have someone entirely dedicated to this task. I think it's our shared opinion / worry that as we start to get close to these deadlines, other municipalities are certainly, and I include our direct neighbors on this one, going to be able to offer, a bigger wage than we might, which is part of our worry in having a 3 or 4 year contract for someone, in that we don't want to get this started, have an expert on staff, and then lose him or her to the offer of full-time employment elsewhere. Because frankly, this isn't I don't want to say it's an area that doesn't have traditional municipal strength, because we've always had public works departments. We do understand, we've always had finance departments. We do understand both how to account for things and how to plan for projects. But this is sort of much like the official plan, it's sort of a symphony of many things together. And the regulations now require this plan to, amongst other things, tie into our planning work, our land use development. So the province is really trying to move us towards a world where we have a very robust plan, and it's going to be a necessary precursor for us to be able to get in the door in our future funding. And quite frankly, and to be abundantly clear, that's our existing funding envelope. We're not talking about abstract, maybe one day there'll be a program to finance, what have you. We're talking about 4 major grants that at the moment make up a little over $15 million of our 206. That's a very healthy portion of what we're doing. And the province wants to move to a universe where unless you've proven every year to them through the FIR, the Financial Information Return, where they're going to be plucking data from this plan, so the plan will link to that as well, you just don't qualify to participate in those. That's sort of the stick they hang over the head, the access to the money being the carrot. At any rate, I don't want to go on or belabor. I imagine there are a lot of questions from the various staff members. We see 3 options. We can go to the private sector, we can attempt to contract someone for a period of several years, or we can add 1 to our staff complement. Given that this plan, when created, the policy and then the plan is going to require annual work and updating. The existing one can sort of be allowed to sit on the shelf, and this one won't. It would become fundamental, which is the real difference between it and the average asset management plan, if I can call one average, that you happen to find at most municipalities. This is really a different beast. It's got far more utility, far more functionality. It goes much farther. It's an order of magnitude bigger. At any rate, with that as the background introduction, be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wells, you're first.
I'll wait, listen to the debate, and then make my comments when we get a motion on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, it's just to make it clear, this work is mandated by the province. We must do. Is that right? Through you to our CAO.
That's correct, Councillor. Our first deadline is in July 1st of next year with respect to having the underlying policy in place. And then there's a deadline in 2021, 2023, and 2024. But yes, okay. Now regulation pursuant to statute.
So must do. So secondly, as a result of being a member, paying whatever was the fee, 10,000 or something like that, you're suggesting we'll save 97,000, and is that savings of 97,000? That's just 1 year. Like it's a one-off. It's not every year.
So, sorry, to be clear, that through FCM, they have a fund that will cover up to 80% the cost, and that includes staff cost, which is part of the reason we've tailored this that way. So 80% of what we spend on that, it would depend where someone started in the salary grid, et cetera. So I can't give you an exact dollar, but I can say 80% is how they've been giving the grants to others.
But just looking at these numbers here, I guess my point is it seems like being a member of FCM and spending 10 has brought us to at least an estimate, $97,000, right?
Well,
about roughly. The investment is worthwhile. How's that?
We felt it was, which is why one of the major reasons we proposed the FCM membership. That being said, we haven't received it. We haven't applied for the grant yet. I don't want to make it sound like it's happened.
Yep, okay. But it's not, this wouldn't happen every year, would it? Like, do we get to apply for the 80% funding for this position every year, or it's just a one-off?
My hope in future years is that, in fact, the province of FCM, of course, their money's from the federal government ultimately. You'll recall that's the sort of new thing to Norfolk County. It's the province of Ontario that's making the largest, that's made the regulatory changes, and it's our dominant source of funding outside of property tax, is Her Majesty and Right of Ontario. And vis-a-vis them, I have no specific knowledge. The civil servants we speak with are cagey, but we do have some reason to believe that in the future they will start making some funding available for this as well, because they're the ones requiring it of their 444 municipal partners.
Okay, thank you. If you get a motion, I'd move the recommendation in the report, Mr. Chairman, if you're
Okay.
looking for a motion.
Do we have a seconder? Ooh. Councillor Columbus? Speakers, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, yeah, last week when we did the FCM stuff, I did do some research on this and how it affected or what grant streams were available. It says here up to $50,000 maximum of total eligible project costs, 80%, but up to 50K. So just for that, but we have asset management plans currently, correct?
That's correct, Councillor. You can find most, if not all of them, on our website.
I remember asking them to have them put up there. Page 72, first paragraph. Currently, the capital budget does not incorporate any asset management planning as will be required under the new legislation. The first set of asset management plans came in 2014 to Norfolk County Council. And none of it's been ever entered into the system?
I can't speak to past history and how those budgets were created, although several people here around the Horseshoe can. I can tell you that we've just gone through a fairly significant budgetary exercise and that the asset management plans as they are were not central. It would be unfair to say they weren't used at all. Ms. Robinson certainly starts with them, but they're not. To be abundantly clear, what the province is requiring is a country mile from what we currently have. I don't know. They share the same title, the same label, but the difference is a crab apple to a Granny Smith. They're both apples, but they're really unalike.
I guess, you know, I've read over those plans when they did come to us, and we just had one come in August 23rd, 2016, and that was facilities. And I know Public Works uses it to keep up to date with the facilities, and now I'm hearing that it's garbage. Well, okay, apples to apples with all different varieties, but it's a rather useless document to us, what I'm hearing now, and we need to redo it. I remember that plan costing us a very large sum of money to get done. And we're in the same boat. I'm just concerned that it won't get used again. Like, the consultant, Stantec, who did it, is a real business. Real data.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Height. The new legislation that came out pretty much ensures that we must use whatever asset management plan we put together. The asset management plans that you're speaking of, they're all on the website, and they are guides, and they do have value to them. I'm sure Public Works have used those asset management plans for their planning. However, in the 10-year capital budget, currently our 10-year capital budget is driven more on what we can afford, not necessarily what we have to replace with our assets. And that is a significant difference. Back in 2014, when those asset management plans were required, a lot of municipalities basically did the bare minimum in order to get those plans online on the website available in order to receive certain levels of funding from the province.
How much do we spend on it? Do you recall? I know there's 6 segments. I thought it was around $300,000. I know it was pricey. It was very, very expensive, and to redo it all, kind of, it hurts, right? But okay, let's say we have to do it, that it wasn't done. Now, you're suggesting staff, which there are no experienced staff available. So I don't see how we're going to find anybody, especially if this was just jammed to us from the province. We're going to be looking for everybody out there, and no one has experience doing it, as opposed to a consultant. And Stantec's already done one part of it for us. They would be a prime player in the game who could train maybe one of our junior staff and bring them up that would fall within the FCM funding models. Is that not an option?
It is absolutely an option. We've included it in the report. We most certainly could go to the private sector and have them try to create a plan. The thing is, we need more than a plan. We need, and although I know it doesn't excite anyone, we really, like, the policy is a major undertaking, and it's going to take, well, I think one individual a year to come up with that if it's to meet the policies, the province's regulatory requirements. We can, and if that is the will of council, obviously we will comply, but there are several pieces to that, and I refer you back to the report. Ultimately, we need some sort of software product, some sort of interoperability and interactivity that doesn't exist. A paper document or an electronic document that sits on a literal or an electronic shelf is not going to get it done. We actually need something that's going to work with our existing software, with our existing staff and business process to interact. And then we need that to be modified and to change and evolve on a permanent and ongoing basis. So yes, we can in the immediate here and now, and you can completely avoid us having to hire an individual in the here and now. But none of us, and we've put our minds to this as best we can, know how we'll operate in the future without someone devoted to this topic. Know how, sure, we could repurpose a junior staff, either tell us what you don't want done or approve the body. You're going to be approving a body in a year and a half, in 2 years, in 3 years. At some point in time, even if we have a consultant create a software package, a software solution, I don't want to say they're going to have to build the software from scratch, but something that draws from across the corporation, we still have to have some capacity to update. So that's an ongoing cost. There will be an ongoing cost regardless of whether we're talking about staff dollars, we're talking about consulting dollars. Your general thrust, absolutely, we can, if that is council's preference. There's a reason why it's not the staff preference. And it isn't that we get some sort of award for having one more staff member. It's about building that sort of succession management, that ongoing internal expertise, because this is going to become integral. We don't go without our planners. Even if we get some help with the official plan, we still have people on staff in-house that can interact with the document that's living, breathing, and evolves every time you make an OP amendment. And that's sort of the analogy I want to use here, if I may.
And I can see that using the OP official plan review, we hired a consultant. He worked with our staff because he's a specialist, specialized knowledge. But here you're looking for a random person to fit in a spot of a newly created function across all the municipalities. You wouldn't do that with planning because we already have professional planners. Yet it works in that case, but not in this case. As far as that argument goes, and the whole systems things, you're losing me on that. I'm a computer guy, right? We have programmers on staff. We can program our financial system. It's cost us $1 million. Customization is the name of the game. Our treasurer knows it well. It can be included in this. That's how I see it going. I'm not in favor of hiring somebody. I think you bring in a consultant and somebody to move in with them so that they can train them up, build the system, put them into it. That's what works for me, not hiring somebody. You're not going to find somebody. Right?
Okay. Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I do recall, and I think it was Gary Houghton that came and sat here one night and we got that massive book, and I think it's the one I'm referring to was our some form of asset management that never, we got it, it sat on my desk at home, and I tried to look at it, but it's complicated, I couldn't follow it. But anyways, I was hoping at some point the consultant would come in and explain to us a bit about it. But it sat on my desk for over 2 or 3 years now. And it's massive, and if I recall, it was a $500,000 cost. I might be wrong on that, but I remember because it shocked me when I seen the cost for it. And I had called around at the time because other people weren't spending that kind of money to have that plan produced. However, we have it. I don't know if that's everything we were supposed to get, but I still wouldn't mind if somebody came in and explained it to me, what we are to do with that or how we are to use